Hi everybody, it's Keren here from tuppencecoloured.co.uk. Thank you very much for joining me today. This is what I've been making today. It is it's a shaker card, and instead of using acetate, it uses net. So stay with me and I'll show you how I made it. These are the things that I'm going to be using today. My card base is a piece of Whisper White. It's the ordinary Whisper White, not the thick Whisper White. And I've just taken a piece of A4 and cut it at 5 3/4 of an inch deep. I'm going to be using the Hearts Come Home stamps and Versamark ink and silver embossing powder. I've got some of this. This is a piece of tulle or dress net or whatever you want to call it. It's very widely available and it's very inexpensive. I happened to get this, I think I got it from eBay, and it wasn't very expensive at all. This piece is a piece of ivory. I tried putting bright white against our Whisper White, but this has actually got a creamy tone to it. So the ivory actually looked better with it. The white was a little bit too stark. I've got a couple of pieces of Whisper White that I'm going to be using for die cutting. I've got a piece of the glossy white card which I've coloured in with inks to try and make it look a bit like an Aurora Borealis. This is left over from an earlier project, and I'll put a link to one of those projects below the video, so if you want to see how I made this effect, then you can go and do so. I've got the iridescent sequin assortment, and I mentioned that I was going to be die cutting. The dies that I'm going to be using are the circle framelets and the hometown edgelets. I'm going to begin by scoring my piece of Whisper White, and my piece of A4 is just under 11 3/4 of an inch wide. So that means that if I score it at 4 inches and at 8 inches, which is what I'm going to do, my third panel is not going to be the same width as the other two. All right, I'm not going to let that bother me because that panel is going to fold over. Now, if you are in the USA and you're using 8.5 by 11, then this measurement isn't really going to work for you, because you're going to have too small a panel left at that end. But what I will do some calculations, and I will put those on my blog for you, so that you can get a similar size of card. It won't be exactly the same, it will be slightly narrower, but you will get your 3 panels. Okay, so I scored my 3 panels, so now I'm going to fold them and fold that one in. And as you can see, it doesn't come all the way, but that's not really going to matter too much, because that is going to be the front of my card. Gone ahead and done my die cutting to save a little bit of time, and all I did was to take the second to largest of the smooth circle framelets, put it on my card where I wanted it, and I ran it through with the card folded, and I just went forward and back a couple of times, and it went right the way through without any problems at all, because again, this is the ordinary Whisper White, it's not the thick Whisper White. So now I have that sort of vibe going on, and before I go any further, I want to do my stamping and embossing, so that if I get this bit wrong, I haven't spent an awful lot of time working on my card. So I'm just going to go over first with my embossing buddy, because that will help, especially as I've had my mucky fingers all the way over it. And I'm just trying to line that up as best I can, and you'll forgive me if it's wonky, won't you? And I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just check that my Versamark has transferred, which it has. And I have silver embossing powder here. Just sprinkle some of that on. And let me just check that I've got everything covered, and I have. So all I'm going to do now is to heat this and watch the magic happen. So I didn't want to waste my time while I was over at the Big Shot, so I did a bit of extra die cutting. I cut this out of my my glossy card using the largest of the smooth circle framelets, that's what they're called. And I cut these pieces using some of the Hometown edgelets. This piece of card I cut down to, I think it was 4.5 by 3 7/8, and it was, which die is it? Let me get it to show you, this one here. And what I did was I put the die on the edge of the card like that, ran it through, and then moved it over and cut those pieces out, and then moved it back again and cut those pieces out. Okay, so that's how I did that one. Excuse me, I've got my head turned away from you here. All right, so now I'm going to start assembling things before I start putting the sequiny bits in. And I want to make sure that this piece is visible through the aperture of the card. So what I am going to do, I'm going to apply my my liquid adhesive, and I'm going to make sure that is up the way that I want it, and just put it so that it just covers the aperture, and I'm just going to close my card on it, just like that. Okay, so that I'm looking at the inside of it, and this is going to be my front panel. So I've decided that I want this little house to be sticking out of the front panel, just like that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of my liquid adhesive down at the bottom of my piece of paper there. I'm just going to get a baby wipe and wipe off my finger before the glue goes everywhere where I don't want it to go. And I want the house to be quite standing up. Okay, I don't want it to be sliding down the hill here. That's more what I want. Okay, not too worried about the inside, that's all going to be covered up. But when I close it, I get that little scene. Right, I stopped there because I went back and recut this piece, because the first piece I cut, which was this one, I hadn't left myself enough room at the base of it. So I went back and I did it again. So this one, is going to go that way. And I'm not worrying about all of these extra bits that are sticking over, because they're all going to be covered up. And I put that on the wrong way round. Ah! I knew I would, but again, it's all going to be covered up inside, so do you know what? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. Well, that fits better as well. Okay, there we go. Push that up a little bit. And how's that looking? And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I've trimmed my piece of net so that it will completely cover the inner panel of my card, quite generously, because I can trim it down later. I've put down some tear and tape on this side of my card, and apparently I've got an email. And I'm just going to take the backing paper off the tape. Right, I've just put this down fairly randomly, and making sure I've covered as much as I can, because I'm also going to put on a nice dollop of my liquid adhesive. Okay, so I'm going to take my net and just stretch it over the panel. So what is happening now is that the tape has grabbed the net, and it will hold it in place while the adhesive has time to dry. So I can now take my big sewing scissors and cut through the extra net. Just trim those down. And while that's drying, I'm going to go and do exactly the same to the other panel. Just a couple more steps now and my card will be finished. I've put my tear and tape all around the outside of the left hand panel here, and I've got my iridescent sequins, and I'm just going to sprinkle just a few, not too many, into the middle of that panel. And I'm going to take away, oops, flying sequins there, take away the backing off of this panel. I'll try again not to lose the sequins. This doesn't want to play. I'm trying to pick up the backing and leave the net where it is, and it's proving unusually difficult. Okay, so one last dollop of glue around the edge here to make sure that everything sticks nicely. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that panel on top of that panel and press down well around the edge. And that, I hope, is going to leave me with a shaky panel of sequins, and I can get my finger in there and kind of move them around. Okay. Right, so my last step is to take this piece, and I'm actually going to kind of eyeball where I want it to go. Now my original thought was to have it low down so that it was hidden when the card was closed, but when it came to it I didn't actually like it like that, so I went back and I actually recut the card. Okay, so I think around about there looks good. And yes, I have got a bit sticking off the bottom here, but that's all right, because I can take my paper trimmer. My scissors would be good as well. Can you see where I've put that? Move that in so you can see it. So I've just lined the bottom of my card up with my cutting channel, and I'm just going to slice that off. And there you go. Okay, my very last finishing touch, I cut a frame using, very last finishing touch, I cut out a little frame using the scallop circle framelets, the large, last finishing touch, I've cut myself a little frame. I used the largest of the scallop circle framelets and the next to largest of the circle, plain circle framelets, and it's whisper white, I'm just going to put some little dabs of glue just around the edge here, and I'm just going to pop that into place, and that just makes a little finishing touch on the front of my card.